How you doing? I'm back, YouTube. So, is Juggernaut buff the best buff of 2021? So that's a question mark. I think it's definitely at least there's no doubt about it, the second best buff of 2021. Is it better than Storm's buff? That's still a question mark, but I definitely think it's at least the second best buff of 2021. There's no doubt about it. I've been wanting to make a Juggernaut how to make Juggernaut very good champion for a while, but I haven't come to it since they got his buff already. Kabam, it's actually looking pretty promising. Is it the best buff overall? Clearly not, but it's definitely one of the best buffs Kabam has made. So let's look at it. And I want to say Juggernaut is one of my favorite characters, so I will not hesitate to rank him up as soon as I can when I get back to playing MCOC. If I get back playing MCOC. So, when it comes to survivability, he's 3 out of 5, which is, pretty decent. It's not like game breaking, but it's decent. Damage is really what's gonna 4 out of 5 is very good. I don't expect his DP damage per hit to be a lot, but I do expect his damage per second to be pretty good because he's going to be constantly unstoppable. So you can be able to keep attacking opponents. That's why I think his damage is 4 out of 5. Ease of use is 3 out of 5. It's not going to be easy to use, but at the same time, it's not going to be hard to use. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle. Utility wise, 3 out of 5. It's nothing great, but pretty mediocre, I guess. Defender strength, he's somewhat hard for defending when it comes to defender strength, but not the hardest defender in the game. So I did think this buff is pretty good. So let's take a look at it. Let's look at his strength and weaknesses. Strength, unstoppable. Juggernaut nearly always has his unstoppable buff up. Use him whenever you need it. Buff stacking, unstoppable each count as buff. Special 1 gives energized and special 2 of fury, so Juggernaut can easily stack buffs. Weakness, non-damaging debuff, so a lot of science champions, you don't want to go up against them, obviously, because of class disadvantage. Also, they can throw a lot of non-damaging debuffs at you. So Juggernauts gain tons of power through his gem of Cytorak. Applying non-damaging debuffs disable his gem. Also, staggers, you don't want opponents that can stagger him because he relies a lot on his buffs. So abilities. Crimson Gem of Cytorak. Juggernaut starts the fight with the Crimson Gem of Cytorak active. So that's really good. And the Crimson Gem of Cytorak is disabled if Juggernaut suffers a non-damaging debuff or is knocked down. So this will make him a little bit easier on defense. If that's not the case, this guy would be so much pain in defense if you weren't able to do that. But this is really good for if you're gonna face against him. So while the Crimson Gem of Cytorak is disabled, Juggernaut suffers a 50% weakness passive. While the Crimson Gem of Cytorak is active, Juggernaut is empowered and gains the following: plus 1173 attack rating, plus 25% damage reduction, immunity to reverse controls. So when it comes to the attack rating, that's pretty much 50% of his base attack, because when it comes to his base attack as a 5-star rank 5, it's 2346. So that's pretty much 50% of his base attack. So he gains 50% base attack when Crimson Gem of Cytorak is active. So basically, he pretty much has like a fury buff from his old self the whole fight. So it's basically just by itself, if he has the Gem of Cytorak, it's basically having a fury buff from his pre-buff. So that's already makes him hit harder than he is now. So another thing is plus 25% damage reduction. That's really not that much, which is nothing at all, but it's something. So if you're running what do you call that, damage mastery, you can take less recoil damage, as well as take less recoil less damage from liquid courage. So you're gonna heal a little bit if you're running liquid courage, but it's not really enough to be like gaining health from it. So that's a pretty much like the only thing I would be nice if it was higher, if his damage reduction was higher, at least 40% damage reduction. That would make him really good buff. If it was a 40% damage reduction, this would no doubt be the best buff of 2021. No doubt. If it was 50% damage reduction, this could possibly be the best buff over all over best buff in MCOC if it was 50% damage reduction. I mean, I still think Diablo's buff is better even if this was 50% damage reduction, but you know, it's pretty close. I say if his damage was, if when he has a Torek like 80% damage reduction, then there's no doubt he would have been the best buff in MCOC, possibly the best champion in the game. Actually, the best champion in the game. If it was 100% damage reduction, he'll be broken. Even at 80% damage reduction while he has the Cytorek on, that's pretty close to broken right there. That's also immunity to reverse control, which is really nice. Gem of Cytorek is Juggernaut's biggest level of power, so you really want to have his Gem of Cytorek because that's how he gains all these utilities and extra power he gets. So unstoppable buffs. So max stack 10. Juggernaut can only activate his unstoppable buff in the Crimson Gem of Cytorek is active. So as I mentioned earlier, you need to have the Gem of Cytorek active, be able to have those unstoppable buffs with you. And also not only that, he gains extra attack with it, which I'll mention a little later on. So Juggernaut gains one unstoppable buff each time he dashes or lands a hit, but loses one unstoppable buff each time he hits it, enter a block, or blocks an attack. Unstoppable buffs decrease by 1 every 1.25 seconds. This timer is reset each time an unstoppable buff is added or removed, or when Juggernaut dodges backwards. So that's what's gonna make him a little bit harder to play with, you know, but still I think he's playable with the unstoppable buffs. He'll make it kind of reasonable to be nothing too difficult to play, I think. So yeah, each unstoppable buff provides the following: 234.6 attack rating, so that's basically 10% of his base attack. So max attack 10, so he gets pretty much 100% base attack if he has 10 unstoppable buff. Increased power rate by 2.5%, so if you get 10 of them, that's 25%. Increased power rate lowers the opponent's chance to trigger stun debuffs by 20%. If this ability prevents a stun debuff from triggering, Juggernaut loses 7 unstoppable buffs. So this is gonna be, I don't think it's gonna be too difficult to have 5 unstoppable buffs. So he's gonna be pretty much stun immune almost all the time if he has the Gem of Cytorek active. So this is really nice thing to have, which will make him much easier to play with, I think, and make him really like unstoppable force of Juggernaut. Stack as many unstoppable buffs as you can, and you can get some massive damage bonus. So maximum momentum. While Juggernaut has 10 unstoppable buffs, he gains an unblockable passive, making him next block attack unblockable at the cost of 10 unstoppable buff. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I mean, it's kind of good and bad at the same time, because sometimes you accidentally hit the opponent's block, and and then you're gonna lose all your unstoppable buff. So I'm not really sure if I like this buff, that extra buff that he has. But let's say if you're going for the knockout, you know this is not a bad thing to have, to be able to hit the opponent's block and be able to knock the opponent. So that could be good, and that could also be bad. So it's like a double-edged sword right there. After landing a maximum momentum, a blockable attack, Juggernaut is unable to gain his unstoppable buffs for 7 seconds. So that's pretty bad. But the good thing is, he places a wither buff on the opponent, reducing the power rate by 50% for 10 seconds. So you can really like pretty much keep attacking the opponent, because they're only gonna gain 50% power rate for 10 seconds. So heavy attacks, he had this buff pretty much the whole time already. 100% chance before he got buffed, he always had this. 100% chance to stagger the opponent for 8 seconds. Next time a staggered opponent triggers a buff, that buff and all other buffs trigger at the same time will immediately nullify. So that's probably one of the best thing about his about him, even pre-buff, is his ability to nullify buffs from his stagger using heavy attacks. If the Crimson Gem of Cytorek is active, inflicts additional stagger. So that's really good. That's an extra buff he's going to get. Special attacks activate the Crimson Gem of Cytorek if it's disabled. So if he somehow he gets disabled, he throws a special attack, you'll get it back. You gain it back. Special attack 1 is you basically gain 25% increased power rate for 10 seconds, which is really nothing. I mean, it's good, but you know, I guess if you want to just keep spamming SP1, you know, that'll be good for some nodes. So I think it's good. It's nothing great. I think what's great about it is his special attack too. Each hit deals a burst of 1173 physical damage, while at maximum momentum, 100% chance to gain a fury buff, granting plus 4,692 attack rating for 10 seconds. That's pretty much 200% of his base attack. So the only biggest downfall of this is while at maximum momentum. So in order to be at maximum momentum, you need to have 10 unstoppable buffs. So it's not going to be easy to have 10 unstoppable buffs all the time. I don't think so. That's going to be a downfall. So you definitely want to be throwing your SP2s when you have 10 unstoppable buffs. But if you do, that's like 200% plus 100%. Plus, when he has the Gem Cytorek, that's another 50%. So he has like 350% attack increase. When you throw that special 2, that's going to do some damage, as well as physical damage. I'm assuming that's modified. So 1173 times 350% from his base attack. That's going to be some decent damage when it comes to SP2. This is the only say it's only for 10 seconds. It would be nice if it was longer. But, you know, if you have max Mystic Dispersion and you're up against champions with heavy buffs, this could be really you can be able to maybe stack 2 of them at a time. Who knows? But having 2 of them at a time, that's plus 400% attack. So he's gonna do some serious damage against opponents with heavy buffs. The fact, not only if you have max Mystic Dispersion. So, special attack 3, Avatar of Cytorek. When activated, the Crimson Gem of Cytorek cannot be removed for 20 seconds. So this is good for some fights, I guess. If you're on a node or opponent that keeps throwing non-damaging debuffs at you, they won't be able to prevent you from them throwing the removing your Gem Cytorek. I mean, you guess you could spam SP3s for those nodes, but it's not. This is pretty much a niche special attack. So mostly you're going to be using your special attack too when it comes to his buff. While at maximum momentum, inflict a stun debuff on the opponent for 4 seconds. Signature ability, Gem Acclimation. The weakness passive from the Crimson Gem of Cytorek is reduced to 5%. I'm assuming that's going to be maxing and becomes the debuff instead. So that's actually really good. I mean, if that happens, you're going to be, if you have willpower active, he's going to be healing from that weakness passive, and it's only 5% reduced damage on you. So that's not a bad thing. And also that's really good when it comes to signature ability, especially against heavy buff champions. All attacks have a 3% chance per unstoppable buff to nullify a buff from the opponent. So if you have 10 unstoppable buffs, that's 30% chance unstoppable buff to nullify a buff from the opponent. So if basically you can have a 5-hit combo, you can nullify a buff from the opponent, which if you have Mystic Dispersion, that will increase your power gain. So I can see him constantly throwing specials against heavy buff opponents if you have maxed Mystic Dispersion. So that could be really good. Synergy bonus, they're pretty much like what he has already. The only thing that's new is Feel Cytorek Embrace incoming from Colossus. So instead of what he had, 2 seconds extra, was it 2 seconds for his unstoppable, it's going to be replaced with Juggernaut starts the fight with 3 of his unstoppable buffs active. So that's a really nice thing to have. It isn't like a game breaking synergy, but it's a nice thing to have. As you can see, recommended mastery, Mystic Dispersion, more special and somewhat consistent stagger and nullify are amazing for Juggernaut's kit. So having Mystic Dispersion spells at 5 out of 5, especially against buff champions. Oof, this is going to be good. So against Slavia Cosmic champions. They have a lot of buffs and they have class advantage as well. So he's gonna be good counter for a lot of cosmic champion. So what I think about his buff, I think it's really, really good. The only down thing I would love if he was his damage reduction was at least 40%. 40% damage reduction. 25%, that's nothing really amazing. I mean, it is definitely a plus if you're running recoil damage, but it's nothing game breaking. You're not going to be gaining any health if you are running damage mastery, like compared to like Diablo or something, where he's pretty much always gaining health running like damage mastery, like liquid courage. So if this was like at least 40% damage reduction, he would be like no no doubt the best buff of 2021. I think his buff is still very good. What do you guys think about Juggernaut's buff? I think it's definitely solid, very very good buff. I think could be the best buff of 2021. Thank you.